Jose, good to see you. Regina, there you are. I hope the car stopped if you're getting out. I'm guessing that's you, Tommy, behind the name.
Yes, Rabbi.
Good to hear you. We'll give it a few more minutes for people to join in through Facebook, and then we'll get going. Not Facebook, sorry, through YouTube. Too many different portals. A reminder for those that are still getting used to the Hebrew calendar, today is the Tisha B'Av. Today is the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av. That means that last night, hopefully you were able to see, we had a community commemoration. And then this morning as well, we were together as a community to commemorate this very difficult day. It also means I haven't drunk in almost a day. So if you hear me working on getting my lips moving and tongue moving, please just bear with me. It's not quite as difficult as Yom Kippur, where I'm talking a lot more. I was able to have a fairly low-key day, just doing general work. But during the presentation, I may still stutter a little bit as I seek out a little bit of saliva till the day's done. But I'll have a nice dinner tonight. Rob, good to see you. Looks like we've got John on YouTube as well. Very nice. All right. So why don't we get...
Good evening. It took a while to unmute. Sorry about that.
Not at all. Not at all. You know, the technology is a little bit less responsive than being in person. So it's bound to take a little bit, but at least we have the ability.
Yes, sir.
So let's go ahead and get started. The topic for today is controlling our language, controlling our words. This is a topic I chose especially because this is Tisha B'Av. And in general, we do not do Torah study on Tisha B'Av because Torah study brings us joy, and Tisha B'Av is a day of sadness. However, we are allowed to study things that provide the lessons of the day in order that we can learn from the disasters of the past to improve the future. As I talked about when we first looked at Tisha B'Av and the other fast days in one of the earlier episodes, Tisha B'Av is considered to be the commemoration of the first and second temple destruction, along with many other catastrophes. But those two were the ones that were considered to be our fault. And the first temple was destroyed very famously because of idolatry, because of immorality, and because of bloodshed. The second temple, on the other hand, the rabbis attributed to sinat chinam, what is generally defined as baseless hatred, meaning an unceasing animosity among the different people of the community, which tore us apart and made us ripe for the picking and destruction by the Romans. One of the key components of sinat chinam is to take that hate and to weaponize it through words. Judaism considers our speech, our words, to be of incredible power. After all, it was God's words that brought the entire of creation into being, and God gave us commands through words. So it should not be that surprising that our words matter too. We're not going to go into every possible category of how we control our speech and language. But I want to look at some of the most important and unfortunately the most eternally relevant types of word issues, the ones that cause the most damage in our society even to this day. So with that as our introduction, we're going to move on. That there we are. Yep, and Robertson's on YouTube too. Good to see you. So there are many different types of damaging speech, but we're going to focus on the types of damaging speech that are from one person to another, not just things like foul language that damages usually the speaker more than anyone else and should be avoided, of course, not speech such as taking God's name falsely in an oath, which, by the way, remember, God's name is not G-O-D. That is an English title, not a name of God. That as well has a different legal history and importance. But the categories of speech that are most harmful, most damaging, and which led in no small measure to the destruction of the Second Temple are as follows. Rechilut, generally called gossip. Lashon Hara, you might call these harmful rumors. Sheker, lies. Motzi Shemra, meaning slander. And onat devarim. And I'm using the sort of a term here, subtle harm, that I'm going to have to explain in much more detail later on. But all 5 of these are going to be broken down into their component pieces. And you'll see that the English title is a close approximation, but not perfect for each of these different types of speech mistakes. Rechilut. So this is the sharing of news and information about others when it is not needed and is not meant to be harmful or insulting. And the classic English word is gossip. Now, it's important to understand, why in the world should gossip be a problem? Why can't I just talk about other people? I mean no harm. I'm not telling anything that's untrue. I'm just talking about someone else. Well, the Torah tells us, you shall not go up and down as a gossiper among your people, using the term rechilut here, or rather rechil, one who is engaged in this practice. And even an innocent example such as, did you hear the Cohens got another dog? It's not your business to be sharing with anyone else. Now, there are a lot of important underlying reasons of why this is the case. First, of course, is God commanded that we don't. But more, I guess, convincingly to those who have not already embraced the idea of commandedness, is that sharing information which is not ours to share, because it is about someone else, even when done without malicious intent, can still open up the subject of our conversation to possible problems. For example, did you hear the Cohens got another dog? Perhaps the person we're talking to already thinks the Cohens have too many dogs. Perhaps they are a dog hater. Perhaps they are somebody who has been having an argument with the Cohens about some other problem, and now they are going to take it out on the dog. This is something that can lead to unintended consequences. And so therefore, information that is not us, not ours, should not be shared with other people, even if we don't have harmful intent. And we're going to talk about exceptions to all of these categories later on. But I just want to get the general framework in, that gossip, talking about another person, even without harmful intent, is something that is, in general, prohibited. Now, like I said, there are some specific cases where it is all right, exceptions. That was the word I was going for. Again, sorry for having Tisha B'Av fast brain. It's not, doesn't work fast when you haven't been eating. There are some specific exceptions in the cases of danger or overwhelming need in order to prevent danger. But in general, just keep your mouth shut. It's not your business to share. By the way, I should also point out that for all of these categories, the listener is also responsible if they see that one of these has been broken. This will be harder, of course, in the case of lies. But if someone begins sharing gossip that you know it's not their business to share, you should also say, well, actually, let's not talk about the Cohens. They're not here. It is your responsibility to exit the conversation, change topics as well. It's not only the person who's speaking that is responsible. Lashon Hara. This is saying something negative, but true about a person while not seriously trying to correct or improve the situation. There is no agreed classic English translation, but denigration is the closest, right? These are harmful rumors. Now, it's very important to understand before we move on to the category of sheker, of lies, that Judaism makes a distinction between saying something that is negative but true and saying something which is untrue about another person. And saying something which is true but negative is still forbidden in most cases. So if you were to talk about, the Cohen's got a dog, and that dog, they don't train him well. He's always making noise, and it's a really ugly dog. Well, all of that could be objectively true, but this is a worse case than simply speaking about someone with no negative intent and not harming them. Because to spread even truth about another person that will be perceived as harmful or is intended as being harmful is a form of harm to the person about whom you are talking. You may say, hey, it's true, I'm allowed. And again, there's some special exceptions for things like freedom of press in a free and democratic society. But in our general conversations, not including the exceptions we're going to talk about later on, even if something is true, if you know it is harmful and you know that what you are saying is not intended to help the person about whom you are speaking, then the general rule is keep your mouth shut. And likewise, if you are hearing it, you should turn the conversation away from this type of topic as quickly as possible and let the person know that you're not really interested in hearing these types of topics. All right, does everybody get the distinction between general gossip and Lashon Hara? All right, this is sort of a worst case of the previous category. Checking YouTube, checking Zoom. All right, next category, sheker. This one's pretty straightforward. It's called lying, right? No maybes, no kind of, no white lies or anything. This is lying. Again, we'll talk about exceptions later, but these are lies. An actual lie means that you are knowingly spreading misinformation about a topic or a person, right? You know that what you are saying is not true, and you are saying it anyway. It doesn't matter whether it's positive, negative, what your intention is. You know it's a lie, and you're doing it anyway. This is, in general, forbidden. If you are not reasonably confident about your information, right? Because remember, an actual lie means you know it is false. Sometimes you are given information that you're not sure if it's true or false. If you're not reasonably confident, you should check it before sharing with others. I cannot tell you how important this is in the modern world of easy sharing of misinformation. The wonderful world of the internet that we're using right now for teaching and sharing Torah is also very well suited for sharing lies. And that means that before you share anything online, you have an obligation to make sure it is not misinformation. It's a higher bar than most of us are used to. Most of us look at the headline, we decide if we agree with the idea, and then we click share. Regardless of whether we've read the article, regardless of whether we've checked the article, the first thing we do is say, do I like the idea? If I like it, then I'm not going to subject it to any checking. You'll notice, however, that if a person doesn't like it, usually that's when they become a great fact checker. Statistics and research have actually shown this. If you give somebody a piece of information and you tell them it comes from an opposing religious, political, or ethnic point of view, they will be much more careful in checking it than if you tell them that it comes from a similar point of view to their own. It's just simply how humans are wired, and we are asked to do better than our wiring. We are asked to rise above our instincts and actually check ourselves to prevent spreading lies. It doesn't matter, as I said, if you intend harm or not. You are responsible for what comes out of your mouth, or in the modern world, what you write or share in any other way. This is based on Exodus 23:7. Keep far away from anything false. Pretty straightforward. Penguins eat whales. It's a lie. This is not the kind of misinformation you should spread. The USA is the biggest country in the world. This is a lie. It's a lie because I know it's not true, neither by population nor by land size. So these may sound harmless, but the general addition of a falsehood into the world only makes it harder for people to find the truth. Like I said, there are exceptions, in particular when it comes to this type of thing, fiction and humorous lying, when it's obviously in the context of humor. That, of course, is perfectly fine and acceptable. But when you are speaking in a way that sounds like you are speaking factually, you have an obligation to ensure that you are being as factual as you can. God will not hold you responsible for the mistakes you missed, but God will hold you responsible for the mistakes that you ignored. Questions on that? And is Lashon Hara translated as the speaking of evil? It's not literally translated as speaking of evil. John was asking from the YouTube chat. But Lashon Hara literally means an evil tongue or an evil speech. So it's a bit more of a nounish kind of thing than a verb, but it's become a verb in common Jewish usage. But the important thing about it, and why people get very confused, is that Lashon Hara, it doesn't mean what you are saying is an evil sentence, right? You don't have to say something that is a lie. You don't have to say something that is necessarily obviously evil. It's the intention of what you are saying that matters much more. And as I said, Lashon Hara is always true. It is simply not meant to be said, as opposed to a sheker, a lie, which is definitely not true and shouldn't be said. Motzi Shem Ra is a different category, but another type of lie. Right? Literally, this is the bringing out of a bad name. This is a type of lying where you damage a person's reputation or livelihood. Right? So not caring about penguins, not caring about the size of a country. This is where you are deliberately slandering another person. Right? Unlike Lashon Hara or Rechilut, this one, like a lie, is definitely not true. In English, we would call this slander. If you're writing it, it'd be called libel. And this violates both Exodus 23 and Leviticus 19, meaning that you're hitting two commandments at once, because you are at once gossiping about another person and you are simultaneously lying about another person. And this can become the most harmful form of damage you can do to someone. For example, I heard Mr. Levy hits his wife. Assuming this isn't true, this is an incredibly pernicious lie or slander to say against another person. I heard Company Q is going bankrupt. Again, when not true, this as well is something that can be extremely damaging to a business. We will see that there are some exceptions where if you are saying something that is true and necessary to be shared in order to prevent undue harm, then yes, you can share that information. So for example, if someone says, I'm going to invest all of my money in Company Q, you can warn them if you have good information that makes you believe it will be going bankrupt soon. You can warn them based off the information you have and making sure they know the degree of confidence you have from your information. But in general circumstances, one could not share that information. And if it's not true, definitely you can't share that information. And our final category, and we're going to go into more detail with all of these, but this one, it takes a lot more explanation. Our final category is called onat devarim. Literally, this means wronging or oppressing a person with words. And this refers in Jewish law to many other types of offenses which harm another and where only the speaker knows the truth. This is based off Leviticus 25, 14 to 18. And verse 14 says, and the part that's clearest, when you sell property to your neighbor or buy any from your neighbor, you shall not wrong another. Okay, that sounds like it's just talking about finances. But Jewish law says, no, there are many other issues that are covered by how we can, in the give and take of conversation, wrong another person. And that's why we're going to hit some examples, because This one is a little bit hard to get our head around because it's not something that we have a comparable category in Western European American thinking. This is a very subtle form of harming. So from the Talmud, if he himself is a convert and comes to learn Torah, do not say to him, shall a mouth that ate forbidden foods, abominable and creeping things, now come and study the Torah, which was uttered by the mouth of God himself? What's wrong with the sentence? Right? On the one hand, it sounds like it could be a praise. This is amazing. Look, here comes somebody who wants to learn Torah, and they used to not be Jewish, and now they are Jewish, and they used to eat things that were horrible, put nasty stuff in their mouth, and now they are studying Torah. Torah is in their mouth, and Torah came from the mouth of God himself. It sounds like you are simply praising the amazing transformation that they have had. However, as I'm sure anybody here who has ever listened to what's often referred to as a backhanded compliment will know, this could be meant as quite a jab of, you're coming to learn Torah, right? Yeah, I know you. You're the guy who used to be out there eating worms and pigs and things, right? Yeah, look who wants to learn Torah. The problem is, nobody knows how this was meant except the speaker, right? When it's a lie, we can check it. When it's gossip, we can decide whether or not you should or should not have shared that piece of information. In this particular case, only the speaker knows whether or not they meant this as a compliment or whether or not they meant this harmfully. And if only they know, then they are only going to be answerable to God. And that makes this a very subtle form of harm, one that is very difficult for a person to take offense against and to seek some form of apology, because you're not even sure whether it was intended as an insult. And therefore, we try to avoid this type of speech because of the possible offense we could be giving, and because it becomes cover for those who intend to give offense, but are doing so in a way that protect them from retaliation. Right? We all know in life, one of the most frustrating things is when a person has insulted you, but they've done it in a way that leaves you unable to demand an apology. That means you now have the harm, and there is no way for you to get them to fix it. And this is what this is dealing with. Other examples. If someone suffers afflictions of disease or has buried his children, do not say to him, as Job's companions told him, is not your fear of God your confidence, and your hope the integrity of your ways? Remember now, who that was innocent ever perished. Right? So the terms Job's companions or Job's friends has actually become a bit of a byword in Jewish thinking for bad friends. Right? These are friends who show up when life is terrible, and they say words that sound like they could be comforting, but in fact, there is an implication to their statement that it's probably your fault. Right? Oh, your kids died? Well, you know, God doesn't punish innocent people. Right? They probably meant it to say God is just and God is with you and God will help you, but they may also have intended to basically lay the blame for your suffering at your own feet. And friends like that, we don't need. This is why, as a general rule in Judaism, if somebody is suffering, we never say they deserve it. We never say this is divine punishment. We never say, well, you know, you must have earned it somehow. That is not a Jewish response to suffering. Our response to suffering is to put an arm around the person, well, when we're not socially distancing, to provide as much comfort as we can, both with our compassion, our words, and whatever material support is needed for a person in that situation. Another example, if donkey drivers sought grain from a person, he should not say, go to so-and-so who sells grain, knowing that the person has never sold any. Right? Again, you're acting like you're helping the person, but in fact, you're wasting their time. And the person will never know what you were actually doing. Were you wasting their time on purpose, or were you wasting their time by mistake? They'll never know. You'll know, God knows, they don't know. leaving them completely unable to demand an apology. Rav Yehuda said, one may also not pretend to be interested in a purchase when he has no money, since this is known only to the heart. And of everything known only to the heart, it is written, and you shall fear your God. Right? Why do we have to fear God about things only known to the heart? Because only God can judge us on this. A person might fear the court when it comes to lying. A person might fear the court when it comes to spreading rumors. But a person does not have to fear the court when what they are saying can only be found in their heart, because the court has no way to examine that properly. God, however, does. By the way, yes, this does mean that if you're not actually in the market to buy a house, you're not allowed to go around to open houses and just check things out. Same, by the way, for purchasing a car or other things. If there's a chance you might buy it, that's fine. As long as there's a chance, you're okay. But if you know it is an impossibility, then you should not be wasting the salesperson's time by walking around. Or even if they're not wasting their time, if they see you on the lot or in the house, it may make them think there is more interest than there is. And that can change how they deal with the potential sale that they have down the line. Any questions on that? All right. So finally, one last category, which goes to show you how careful we treat how we speak to each other. And this is a Vac Lashon Hara, literally the dust of Lashon Hara, meaning it's not the thing itself, but it's the residue of the thing. It is so close that we still try to prevent it whenever we can. What is this? If one says, you should stay like you are now, or he says, don't ask me about him, I don't want to say what happened. Anyone who praises his friend in front of those that hate him has spoken a Vac Lashon Hara, since this causes them to speak negatively of him, right? There are little conversational trips. In modern psychological terms, we'd call them passive aggressiveness, where people can provoke responses that will lead to negativeness, right? So if you're talking to somebody and you know they don't like Mr. Cohen, and you say, oh, I saw Mr. Cohen the other day. Boy, is he looking good. And you're doing it to bait him in order to make the guy say, Mr. Cohen, that jerk, blah, 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 right? Technically, you didn't say anything bad about Mr. Cohen. Technically, you probably didn't break Lashon Hara, but definitely you have created a situation where you found a response that is going to definitely be wrong. And the same with, oh, don't ask me about him. I don't want to say what happened. It makes people wonder, well, what did happen? Now, you didn't actually say what happened, but you have raised enough suspicion that this can still lead to damage to the other person. Or saying to somebody, you should stay like you are, if you know that probably that isn't the best situation. You know, oh, no, you should definitely not sell your house, knowing in your own mind that the property price is likely to go down. Maybe you're going to make a better counteroffer. Maybe you don't like the new neighbor that was thinking of buying that house, and you're giving bad advice for your own reasons. You haven't necessarily lied, but you have definitely gone out of your way to do something which is going to lead to harm to the other person. This one is hard to avoid, right? Because we often don't think of the outside of the main categories of malicious speech as being something we have to patrol. But if we think carefully, not only about our own speech, but about what we have seen others say, and of course, what we see rife online, we can recognize that if we were all more careful in this, the world would be a better place. All right. Why did God prohibit these things in the first place, right? Like so many of the commandments in the Torah, God does not say, I am prohibiting this because. God just tells us, don't do it. But thankfully, in other parts of our Tanakh, of the Bible, as well as rabbinic writings, we are given some insights of why these things would be prohibited. So from Proverbs, the book of Mishle, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that indulge in it shall eat the fruit thereof. Put another way, live by the sword, die by the sword. if you are the kind of person who uses your mouth as a weapon against others, you will find others doing the same in return to you. So out of self-interest, you should avoid these activities. From Psalms to Tehillim, who is the man who desires life? One who loves days of seeing good. Guard your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. Right? If you want a good life, and if you want to have a life that will be good, in every definition of that word, controlling your mouth is one of the most important ways to ensure that happens. Right? Nothing can ruin your life like saying something that is mean, that is insulting, that is a lie, that is gossip, all the other things. And nothing, of course, can ruin other lives like that as well. Why do we prohibit? Rashi giving a little bit of an insight on our verse from Leviticus about going around as a gossip in Rechilut. You shall not go about as a gossiper. I say that since all those who start quarrels and speak Lashon Hara go into homes to seek what evil they can see or what evil things to tell in the marketplace, they are the same as those who go about spying. Right? He is saying, look, a true gossip, somebody who makes this their business to know everyone's business, that's hard work. Right? They go around, and when they visit with people, they are carefully cataloging everything they hear in order to be able to then go and share that in some other place that will stir up trouble and stir up damage. And that is what it is to be a gossiper. And if you think, oh, it's just a casual thing, there's a reason you paid attention to certain phrases, to certain information, to certain news you found. And the reason you're now dumping it and sharing it with someone else, it's because you are hoping to have a particular effect. And usually that effect, when it comes to gossip, is not going to be a positive effect for whomever you are talking about. And that then makes you more reflective on how you are listening, so that you're not cataloging all of the different dirty bits and juicy bits to then be able to share. The book of Mishlei, of Proverbs, goes on. These 6 are hated by the Lord, and the 7th is the abomination of his soul. Haughty eyes, somebody who is very arrogant, a false tongue, lying, hands spilling innocent blood, murder, a heart plotting vain thoughts, right, scheming against others, feet hastening to run evil, those that are actually evil, eager to do wrong, as opposed to those who give in to doing wrong, a false witness spouting lies, somebody who was lying in court, and the inciter of strife among siblings. Now, notice inciter of strife is the 7th, right? This is the special abomination. Somebody who is deliberately giving information to different parties in order to cause conflict between them. And this is not only about families, this is any personal relationships that a person is stirring up to try and sit back and watch the trouble, watch the fireworks. You know, it's unfortunate that so much of our drama and comedy TV and movie programming is built up around pretty much all of these, because all of them are very negative. And the resolution after half an hour that fixes all the damage that was discussed, that was caused by these types of things in the first 5 minutes is the ultimate lie. Because as I think everybody who's ever lived knows, these types of behaviors have much more lasting effect than can be fixed in just 30 minutes of programming. Think about what happened to Miriam, who spoke about her younger brother, for whom she had risked her life to save from the Nile, right? She's the older sister, so she should have more respect. She has helped her brother. She obviously loves him, but she spoke about him. She didn't even speak negatively about him, other than compare him to other prophets. This is taken from the book of Numbers, where she is talking about Moses's relationship with his wife, or lack of relationship according to Jewish understanding, and basically saying, why is he separating from his wife? We're prophets too. We don't have to separate from our spouses. And he himself didn't mind, right? Moses didn't complain about the problem, right? He didn't complain about her talking about him. Nevertheless, she was still punished with sara'at, the skin affliction that the Torah talks about. All the more so for other wicked and foolish people who speak all types of haughty and pompous words. Anyone who wishes to improve should stay away from such people, right? If even Miriam, who probably had good intentions and clearly had her brother as an object of love in her heart, is punished in this way, then we should imagine that those who do this deliberately and maliciously, all the more so, this is such a negative character trait. And if we see people engaging in it, we should stay away. Right? The rabbis said that 3 sins are punished in this world, and the sinner loses his place in the world to come. By the way, that is considered to be like doubly bad. Right? Being punished in this world, that means going to jail or having some other punishment. Losing your place in the world to come means that after this life, you're simply done. Right? Your existence is obliterated, annihilation. And those 3 are idolatry, incest, and bloodshed. And Lashon Hara is equivalent to all of them. Now, this is a little bit of hyperbole. Right? This is a little bit of an exaggeration in order to show people how important this is. Because unfortunately, as I think we all know, most people do not take the prohibition on gossip and the other forms of harmful speech seriously enough. And the rabbis want you to know you should avoid it with the same seriousness as you avoid idolatry, incest, and bloodshed. If you could never imagine yourself stabbing a person, then you shouldn't stab them with words. And so too for the other 2 activities as well. And furthermore, the rabbi said that Lashon Hara kills 3 people, thus comparing it to bloodshed, but more than the average murder because now there are 3 victims: the speaker, the receiver, and the one spoken about. And the receiver more than the speaker, right? The speaker is simply speaking, but the receiver is hearing it and they are having themselves damaged in their understanding, their relationship to the object of conversation, right? So the speaker, yes, they are hurting themselves by doing this, but the person who chooses and allows themselves to continue listening, they are also letting themselves be damaged, making it a greater damage than the one who spoke. And of course, the person who is the object is being damaged, obviously. And what is the tikkun then for fixing Lashon Hara? In Judaism, we always want to know if somebody has done a particular crime, how do we fix the damage they have done, right? If I have stolen from you, I have to return. If I have hit you, there's a very specific way Judaism calculates the damages for personal injury. If I have spoken ill about you, there is no tikkun. There is no method for fixing this. Right? A very famous rabbinic story, which has since been spread far and wide, often without attribution, is when a person has committed gossip, they go to the rabbi and they say, "Rabbi, how do I fix this?" And the rabbi says, "Take a pillow and go up to the top of a mountain and shake out all the feathers, and then go find all the feathers." And it is impossible to find every place that your Lashon Hara has spread. It's impossible to ever track down all of the effects that your language has caused. And therefore, there is no actual way to fully remedy it in this world and in this life. A person can still change, a person can still try to fix everything they can, but you should know before you speak that there is no 100% way to ever get all those words back under control once they're out of your lips. I think in some ways we've actually learned this lesson more clearly in the modern world, where people have begun to realize anything online stays online forever, right? If you don't want it to be known by everyone until you are 120, you probably shouldn't post it. You probably shouldn't put that picture out there. All right, so let's get to some of these exceptions. I'm checking my time there. So let's talk about rechilut, about gossip. Right? What are some of the exceptions for talking about another person? Again, this is truthful and this is not done maliciously. For the real concern of the Torah in forbidding evil talk, even when true, was the evil intent involved in wishing to disgrace our fellow and enjoy his discomfiture. One may speak what could be called gossip in certain circumstances and with certain intentions. So let's break it down. If the information being shared is being said for purely constructive purposes and meets the following conditions, it can be shared. You'll notice some of these are very objective, some of these are very subjective, which means it's very important to be honest with yourself before you open your mouth. 1, the information must be seen by the speaker or be known to be true. Right? You have no business saying anything unless you are sure it is true and an honest reporting. 2, to go along with that, the information cannot be exaggerated. Right? We're talking about sharing something here that probably shouldn't normally be shared. If you do find it from the other reasons fit to be shared, don't blow it out of proportion. Don't embellish the story. Don't make it go from 5 to 50, but be as close to what you know as true as is possible. 3, the speaker should be sure that the news breaks Jewish law. Right? Why are you sharing this if the person has not actually committed a transgression? Right? If it's just that Mr. Cohen got a dog, that's perfectly fine. Right? There is no law being violated under Judaism for that, and most likely not under American law either. So just full stop, there's probably no reason for you to be sharing it. 4, the speaker must have pure intentions. Right? This is very subjective. You have to have the intention that you are trying to help either the person whom you are speaking to avoid harm coming to them, or the person about whom you are speaking, because, as we'll see, you have failed to help them directly, and you are now bringing others in to help you in that way. 5, as well as you can see, the speaker should first go to the sinner before speaking about him. Right? If you know that so-and-so has been stealing from the cash register at work, the first thing you should do is say, hey, I've seen you take from the cash register. You need to stop, right? And you need to return whatever you took. That needs to be step 1. If the purpose could be achieved in a way other than speaking, that should be tried first. So in the case of the cash register theft, for example, if you were to say, talk about, hey, I heard that the company is putting in or has put in new security cameras that are hidden. They say they're going to try and catch whoever might be taking from the cash register. You're not outing the person. You're not directly talking to them, again, if they already know, but you're making it clear that they should know that you know that something has been happening and that what is going on is wrong and that they should stop. And you can be sure that you are showing this, therefore, to them in a way that is showing your good intentions, right? If you wanted to harm them, you would have already talked to the boss. If you wanted to harm them, you would have just spilled the beans in front of them and everyone else right then and there. This way, it's giving them a chance to fix their behavior. And 7, the speaking should not cause more damage to the subject than would have been decreed in a court. This is a little hard for many cases. In the case of stealing from the cash register, the damages would be to return the money that was taken. But in other cases, sometimes it's hard to know exactly what would the punishment be for the misdeed that they are committing and what will be the punishment that they'll receive for the actual gossip leaking out. So this is a very difficult one to weigh, but you have to ask yourself, if I speak, will this actually cause them more harm than they deserve? And that is something that you have to be very careful about. But you'll notice that all 7 of these are guided by being as minimal as possible while having the best intentions for the person whom we are rebuking, whom we are talking about at heart. That has to be there. If you're not sure whether you actually care whether the person whom you are speaking about is harmed, then I can guarantee you are not the one fit to be speaking about this particular piece of news. Right? If you hate them in your heart, then you should not be sharing any news about them. And yes, we can all imagine what the internet would be like if people only spoke about things that they actually cared about rather than the things that they hated. Lying does have some exceptions. This may be a little startling. Those of you who come from a Western civilization perspective may know that many philosophers have tried to make lying a categorical imperative, meaning that one should never lie at all, 100%, no exceptions. Judaism has recognized that there are moments when lying is the correct behavior. And we'll see what those are. It can be for peace, for privacy, to avoid embarrassment, and to avoid undue trouble to others. And we'll go through each of them. Peace. One may lie in order to reconcile husband and wife, friends, siblings, or others who are fighting. Such lies should only be aimed at restoring peace and not giving advantage to anyone in the fight. So if you need to have a little lie to try and say, you know, I'm sure that if you apologized, I bet Sally would forgive you, even if you're not 100% convinced, it at least gets the conversation moving, right? If you can use a lie to help bring peace between people, then it can be a worthwhile activity. But you have to be sure that what you are doing is bringing peace to both of them, not just giving one of them the upper hand in the argument, because that's not bringing peace. That's just bringing more strife. This is very rarely the appropriate behavior. Usually it is best to talk to each of them directly and try and get each of them to admit whatever their own part may be in the conflict, and to try and get them to work it out together. But in very, very rare cases, it can be acceptable. It is not nearly as usable as you'll see in movies and TV shows, where it seems to be a very common trope. Privacy. One may lie to avoid revealing their private life to others, such as when asked if you are pregnant, you may say no, even if you are, to keep people from knowing your personal affairs. Right? You are under no obligation to have other people, to give other people honest answers about things that other people have no business knowing. Right? It's not their right to know if you are pregnant, if you are dating, if you are on a diet, or anything else that you might consider to be private. If you don't want to share it, you're allowed to lie to avoid sharing that. Again, that doesn't mean that you should lie. If you're willing to share, that's fine. And oftentimes you can tell when the person is asking whether they are asking out of general concern and interest, or whether they're asking because they are collecting information because they're a gossip. Over here, like midwives in the Exodus. Yes, exactly. Wesley from YouTube asks about the midwives in Exodus. Absolutely, they told Pharaoh that the Israelite women were having the babies before they could arrive, and that meant that they did not have to participate in the murder of the baby boys. And they are commended for lying like that. For saving a life is the number one reason to lie, and the number one reason, of course, that we hope we never have to use. The other examples that I'm sharing are more prosaic. Embarrassment. One may lie to avoid embarrassing another person. If asked where someone is, you may say they are at some event rather than say they are home with an embarrassing illness. One may omit embarrassing details when discussing someone's past. Now, again, this doesn't mean that you are omitting important details. Oh, right, wasn't he a serial murderer? I'm sure he'd be a great new person at the daycare. You know, that kind of information maybe you should share. But the fact that he used to, I don't know, he used to be a circus clown and he got fired because he wasn't funny enough. Who needs to know this, right? Sure, we could all laugh now at him, but that doesn't mean that it's something that is appropriate for us to be sharing with someone else. And so if they ask you, tell me about his background, and you know this embarrassing detail, you're under no obligation to actually share it. Even if asked, you can say, I don't really know much about that. And let it go, because you have no obligation to share the truth if it will unnecessarily embarrass another person. An example of avoiding embarrassment or of harming other people with lies comes in the conversation in the Talmud between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. These were two different schools of thought that very famously disagreed on many topics. One recites praise of the bride as she is, meaning when you go to a wedding, you are supposed to compliment the bride. This is something I think that has continued to be common practice outside of the Jewish culture as well. And Beit Hillel says one recites a fair and attractive bride, meaning this is the formula you should use, right? The bride is glowing. Beit Shammai said to Beit Hillel, in a case where she was lame or blind, does one say to her, a fair and attractive bride? But the Torah states, keep far from a false matter. Right? So Beit Shammai is saying that would be a lie. Now, in their opinion, and Beit Shammai was a little bit hard at times, they would think that somebody who was lame or blind, you couldn't call fair or attractive. Now, obviously, that is wrong. Obviously, someone who is lame or blind could absolutely be fair and attractive, but Beit Shammai was thinking more generically of how most people treat those with different types of disabilities. It is sad that people have had these attitudes for thousands of years. It is even sadder that even with all of the instruction that we have had, many people still have these attitudes. But suffice it to say, Beit Hillel is going to slap this down. Beit Hillel said to Beit Shammai, according to your statement, with regard to one who bought something poorly made from the market, should another praise it and increase its value in his eyes, or insult it and reduce value in his eyes? Now, there's a couple little subtle rebukes here. Who, of course, is the manufacturer of the bride? It's not the bride's parents, it is God. So basically what Beit Hillel is saying is, if you want to say the bride isn't beautiful, basically you are complaining about God's craftsmanship. And that's not right, right? We don't complain how God made the world. In fact, there are special blessings to say for people that are of exceptional appearance, whether they be exceptionally attractive to our eyes or whether they be exceptionally different to our eyes. But both of them are praise to the person as well as praise to God. And what Hillel is saying here, Beit Hillel is saying, is that you can't, when somebody is getting married, telling them your honest opinion about the attractiveness of the person they're marrying is not what they want to hear. They have made their choice. They have made their decision of who to be with. If you insult who they are going to be with, all you are doing is causing strife between these two people. Because now, in this case, the groom is going to look at the bride and go, you know what? Now that you mention it, maybe I'm not happy with the way she looks. I thought I could be, but if people are going to keep, making fun of her, maybe I'm not okay with that. And maybe I should divorce her. You're creating strife in this relationship where there was none before, right? You're creating regret where there is no reason for there to be regret, right? So the whole idea of just shut your mouth and say nothing, that also doesn't work, right? You must say that he should praise it in his eyes. From here, the sages said, a person's disposition should always be empathetic with humanity, right? Because if you just keep your mouth shut and don't praise, well, everyone knows, we've all heard the saying, if you've got nothing nice to say nothing at all. Well, that means if you say nothing, you have nothing nice to say, and the person who hears nothing knows that what you wanted to say was bad. So therefore, keeping your mouth shut in this case is almost as harmful as saying something that is directly insulting, which leaves us with the only option, which is to say, she's beautiful, he's handsome, it's amazing, your kids are very cute. It doesn't matter whether you objectively think it is an ugly baby, every baby is cute. And that is for you to say. You don't get to dodge it by just going goo, goo, goo. Compliment the baby, make the parents smile, and help bring a little more joy into that family. It is not something that you should run from. A few more exceptions to our line, to allow lying, undue trouble. One may lie to avoid causing unnecessary trouble to others, such as saying the food was fine to prevent the host from making more, or saying you don't need a ride because the person you are speaking to will miss an important event if they help you. right? If you know the person you're talking to is the kind of person that will give the shirt off their back to help anybody in need, don't tell them you have a need if you don't think it's right for them to give you their shirt. Right? This is how you have to sometimes help others not go too far in helping other people. And if it means telling a lie of, no, the food was great, I'm full, because you don't want to make them have to go make more, then you say, I'm full, even if you're not, or even if you didn't enjoy. And if it means telling them, oh, no, I'm fine, I've got a ride to the airport, because you know that they'll end up taking you to the airport at 5 a.m., and that's going to mean that they're late for their work or they're late for something else that's important, then sometimes it means you just have to tell your very helpful friends, I've got it covered, even if that's not 100% true. Robertson, or maybe the groom will punch the guy in the face. Yes, going back to our last slide, insulting the bride is a really good way to get slugged at a wedding. Insulting the bride is also a really good way to ruin your relationship. Of course, in the old days, when you had communities where weddings were public events, you didn't always get to choose who was going to show up at the wedding. People would show up because that's what you did when there was a wedding, which of course made for some very interesting interactions when all the people who were there weren't actually guests that RSVP'd. But that's also why there are special rules for making sure that the random people who come to the wedding don't say stupid things, because we all know random people are prone to saying stupid things. So just as a summary, I want to read from Ramban, the great Spanish commentator on the Torah and Jewish law. It is possible that one could be a scoundrel with the full permission of the Torah, meaning it is possible to be a jerk without breaking the commandments, as long as he didn't violate specific commandments, right? He could be drunken, gluttonous, crass, and speak all sorts of vile things without technically breaking one of the mitzvot. So after giving the details of those things that are prohibited, the Torah gives a general command to be holy. From Leviticus 19, speak to all the congregation of the children of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. This is the ultimate summary, right? If you're not sure what you're about to say is good or not good, simply ask yourself, is this something that brings a little bit more of God's holiness into the world? Is this something that will make the world shine a little more brightly with God's light? Or is this the kind of thing that is, to use the modern vernacular, just throwing shade? Am I just dimming the world, making it darker and adding to its pain and suffering? And if you're not sure, usually the best thing to do is keep your mouth shut. That is usually a good idea. If you're really unsure and there's a very important case, you're always welcome to contact me and I'll be happy to give you what advice I can. But most of us, when we are thinking carefully about how we are speaking and putting our words into the world, most of us can get this right when we follow the general outline of what I have given here tonight. It's only when we are being quick and fast and taking shortcuts in our thinking, or we are angry or upset, that we begin to cross the line without noticing it. Which is why when we're in those moments, we have to be doubly alert. The same way that we have to watch our fists, we have to watch our lips. And if we do both, then we can avoid a lot of the problems that led to the destruction of Tisha B'Av thousands of years ago. And we can also avoid a lot of the strife that is currently plaguing our modern communities here in this country and globally. Any final questions or comments? Double checking over there, double checking here. Look at that, I finished right on time. All right, well, good night then, everyone, and take care. And I will be seeing you again next week.
Good class too, Rabbi.
Thank you very much.
Good night, bye-bye.
Take care,
You
everyone.
have a good night.